Welcome to our video on how to create a contact report in Salesforce. My name is Steve, and in the next few minutes you will learn how to create reports in Salesforce that take advantage of this super easy to use and powerful tool. It's my opinion that every user will benefit by knowing how to get what they want out of Salesforce using reports. In the description I've included links to our reports and dashboards playlist where you can explore every video that we've made about reports. I've also included a really helpful video about optimizing Salesforce and increasing results. Check those out when you can. Now let's get into it.
Okay, let's start by selecting the Reports tab. And from the Reports tab, you have the New Report button. Now, if you don't have the Reports tab on the app that you're on, we call this the app, by the way, you'll want to possibly change the app that you're in. So if you go by to over here to the 3x3, you can either look for a different app like Sales or something like that, or you can just type in Reports. And if you select Reports here, it'll take you into the Reports menu. I'm assuming that most of you have a Reports tab in your primary app that you're using, but if not, you can use that technique that I just shared with you. Now, if you'd like to create a new report for contacts, you go ahead and select New Report. And over here, you have the ability to type in or select a report type. So in this example, I'm going to type in contacts, but I'm looking at recently used reports rather than all. So if I switch over to all and then type in contacts, it'll give me the different options that I have available to me. And the basic thing I will tell you about the report type is the report type really controls what information is in your report, which means fields that you have the ability to either filter on or to display in the report. Now you'll notice there are several different options here. What you're looking for is what information do I want to display in my report and what information do I want to filter on. If I want to filter on contacts and accounts, I'd select that. If I want contacts with their activities, I'd select activities with contacts. So you want to make a decision about how to do that. Now we do have a video on how to add report types. We're not covering that here today. That's another video in our reports and dashboards playlist, which is linked in the description. So in this example, I'll go ahead and select contacts and accounts. And when I do that, I'll select Start Report. It takes me into the default mode of this particular report. Now, in this example, what you're seeing here is the default display when I select contacts and accounts. And from here, I can then begin to make the changes that I want to make to this report. Now, the first thing that I like to point out to people is just some basic navigation. First thing that I always like to recommend is that over here on the right-hand side, you select Update Preview Automatically. Now, this is what allows you to control essentially how fast the report refreshes itself. If you're dealing with a large data set, like thousands and thousands of records, I would choose to not update automatically because as I make changes, I don't want the report to go so slow trying to render all those changes. But if I'm working with several thousand records or under that, which is what I'm doing in this org, then I'd like to have that option selected because then it makes the change, it reflects the change I'm making to the report quickly, and I don't have to refresh the report to see the change. All right, the second thing I want to point out is this left-hand side. And this left-hand side really controls sort of the core parts of the report. They include the filter section, which controls what you see in your report. The outline section, which essentially controls the structure of the report. And then you have the fields, which is essentially what you selected when you chose contacts and accounts. So these are the data objects, if you want to use that term, or just the fields that are eventually available to you in the potential report. All right, so I'll go ahead and minimize that, and we'll touch on that in a little bit here in just a second. All right, so from the filter section, I like to start and look at the fields that I want to control, the records that I want to control. So in this example, I have the option to show me those records that belong to me, or those records that belong to everybody. And so in this example, I'm simply going to select all accounts because accounts is sort of at the top of the hierarchy. And that gives me the ability to see everything. Then from within that section, I can start to decide what I want to see. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and set all time for all of my contacts because I don't want any limits at the moment on what I'm seeing. So in this example, it'll open up the different options that I have available. Now, in this particular report, I don't really want to start with salutation. I'd like to start to change the reports that I have available to me. So one option is I can click on this down arrow and I can select remove column. And I can also use those down arrows to do other things like sort or move or whatever. But I'm going to show you in a minute some other options that you have available that make that a little bit easier to do. So in this example, I don't want to remove any more fields using this. So what I'll do here is click over to the outline. And in the outline view, I can control what I'm seeing. So in this example, if I want to take out, let's say, mailing street, mailing city, I can click on these. And you'll notice as I'm doing that those changes are rendering automatically. That's what I meant a few moments ago when I said update preview automatically. So I'm going to do the same thing with phone and fax and mobile. I'm just going to take all those fields out because those are just defaults that at the moment I don't care too much about. Okay, now in this example, I've got these basic options. Now, if I want to add other fields to my display, I can either click over here to view those fields and I can drag them over, or I can go into the column section right here and simply type them in. So in this example, if I say alias and I want to add that, then I can go ahead and add that to my report. You'll see it added it here at the bottom. So if I wanted to do account owner alias, I could do alias again. I can go ahead and do that. Now, one other thing available to me is I can, from this window, I can see all the fields that I want to have access to. So you'll notice as I scroll through this, it's grouped by contact, and then these subheadings here are the same as the subheadings over here, or what we call the sections. And so I can either look at this list over here on the left, or I can search for it over here on the right. I find that if I roughly know the name of the field that I'm looking for, it's easier to simply go in here and use the search. Now, the thing I wanted to demonstrate here, because we chose a report that was contacts and accounts, I can also pull information from the account record. So a good way to demonstrate that is just to kind of show these fields here by selecting the account. So for example, if I wanted to pull in the account source or industry or the account type, I can do that here. So in this example, I'll go ahead and use the word account type. And you'll see here, I see the field type and I see the field here as well. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And you'll see that add to my list. So now I have a list of accounts grouped by, I haven't grouped them yet, but I now have the ability to group them by that account type. So the column section over here on the left just enables you to organize that and sort of present that data. But we haven't talked yet about rows. So this report right now is not grouped by any value. It is simply what we would call a list report, or what used to be called a tabular report. But if I want to actually group this report and subtotal fields, then I would want to add a grouping. Now in this example, I'm going to go ahead and use the account type field again, and I'm going to go ahead and group my records based on that. And so in this example, it will then show me all of the accounts that are labeled as architects, and then it will show me the contacts that are labeled within that. And so in this example, I've added this grouping that enables me to do that. Now, if I wanted to, I could add other groupings to this report that would give me more information or give me a deeper ability to organize and group it. But for the purposes of this video, I simply wanted to show you the ability to group those reports. Okay, so now I've added a grouping. I have the ability to add columns. One other thing that a report gives you is the ability, once you've added a grouping at the row level, you can also group by columns. And so this is what used to be known as a matrix report in Salesforce Classic. And I can simply add in something, let's say by contact owner. And what that'll do is actually add contact owners across the top of the report. So I have it grouped by architects vertically, and I can group it by people or owners horizontally. This isn't a great example because in this demo database we have one user that owns all the records. But this is what used to be traditionally called a matrix report. And so again, very easily from within the report editor, you can add rows and columns that allow you to group by that. I'm going to go ahead and remove my group columns because I want to just show a simple report chart here. So now that I have built this contact report, I can add a chart to this report if I want to. And so over here in the right-hand side menu, you have the option to add a chart. Now, one of the neat things about adding a group is once you've added a group, you now have quite a few charts available to you. So in this example, if I select Add Chart and select the Chart Settings or Chart Properties button, I have several different charts to choose from. Now, in the chart, these are called chart properties, but in dashboards, they're called components. And so one of the things you want to think about when you're adding a chart to a report is, are you simply going to use the report and the chart standalone, or are you going to use this report in the context of a dashboard? If you're going to use a report with a dashboard, I don't recommend using the chart so much because the chart options are kind of limited here. You don't have a lot of options to configure the chart. But if you're building this into a dashboard, in the dashboard settings, there's a lot of options related to how you configure a chart in a dashboard. And we do have a video called Creating Dashboards, or How to Create Dashboards. And that video is available in the Reports and Dashboards playlist. And that will go into detail of the different options that you have. But here in the chart, in the report, we have several options. We have a bar chart, what I call vertical or column. If you have more than one grouping, you'd have stacked bar and stacked column. Again, remember, I only have one grouping here. But if I add an additional grouping, then I would then be able to stack my, my chart based on that. So a good example of this would be owner. If there's 4 records in our entire database that are architects, and 2 of them are owned by Steve and 2 are owned by Matt, then if I added owner here as the additional field, I would then have the ability to stack the chart based on that, which means it would show these 2 are owned by Steve and these 2 are owned by Matt. So again, that's the benefit that you get of having multiple groups or multiple rows that you're grouping on. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and leave this as a bar chart just for the sake of keeping this video short. I will go ahead and leave that in the video, and then now I'm going to go ahead and save this report. So in this case, I'll go ahead and hit save, and I'm going to just leave this name as is. But when I tab down, Salesforce will give it a unique name. That's how Salesforce sees it in the back end. And then I've got report, a description, and folder. Now in this example, I'm creating a report that I'm going to just use for my own use, so I would leave it in private reports. But if I wanted to make it more available, I could go to select folder, and then I could add this to a reports folder that other people can see. So right now I'm keeping it private, but if I added it to a public folder as an example, then it would be available to other people and they could make copies of it, they could run it, etc. So I'll go ahead and leave this as private just for the sake of keeping it simple. But that's a very important element, is how you control viewability or accessibility is through that private reports option. So here I'll go ahead and hit save, and now this report has been saved, and now I can run it. So you'll notice when I saved it, I'm back in edit mode, but now if I run this report, it will allow me to run it. And once I run a report, I then have some other options available, which I'll talk about in a moment. I can export it, I can subscribe to it, etc. Now, once I'm in the report viewing screen, I can turn things on or I can turn things off. For example, I could toggle the chart up and down. I could search within the report. So let's say I wanted to find cloud, I could do that. And so I've got some different options in terms of how I use these different capabilities. One thing that I often do is I will turn the chart off because I don't want to see it. It's sort of taking up a lot of real estate, so I can turn that chart off. And now it will narrow it down. I can also update my filters. So these are the default filters that I created when I made the report. But let's say now I want to dial this down to just maybe fiscal year. I can go ahead and do that. And you can see there the total changed. That might have happened quick. So if I go back and if I go all time again, watch this number right here. It goes up to, I think, to 183, 186. But if I just said, I think it's this year, then when I apply it, you'll see that number go down. And so down it goes down to 144 or whatever. So again, you can dynamically apply these filters, but these changes won't save. So I can make changes to the charts, I can turn them on, I can turn them off, I can look for records, but it won't save the changes I made unless I go in and edit the report. Now, since I mentioned that, I want to actually just go ahead and do that because I would like to take the chart off of this report. So I don't want the report to default with this chart open now. So I'll go ahead and click back into edit. And in this example, I want to remove this chart. It's a little bit it's not obvious how to do that. In the past, sometimes I've turned it off thinking that if I saved it like this, it would save that change. But this is just what allows you to view the chart. If I want to actually remove the chart, then I come over into chart properties, and down at the bottom, it's a little hard to see, a little hard to find. You can remove the chart. Now, when I run this report and save it, it won't display that chart. It won't even have the chart. But like anything, on the fly, you could add a chart if you wanted to. But again, by adding it here, it wouldn't save unless you edited the report and changed it. And finally, if I click on reports and I go into recent, you'll see the recent report that I just created. And as I've said, you can go ahead and run that report, and now you can work with it. A few of the things that I like to mention before I close the video. One, if you want to export this, you have the option to export it, and I'll talk about that in a second. You can also subscribe to this report, which means it can be emailed to you on some schedule. You can also add it to a dashboard and add to a campaign. And if you want to add it to a dashboard, remember we do have a video in our Reports and Dashboards playlist that talks about how to create a dashboard. And by adding this report to that dashboard, if you have permissions to edit that dashboard, you could quickly add this to a dashboard as you built it. Okay, so let's go ahead and just finish on a quick review of the export feature. When I click export, I have the option to export this as formatted, which means it will look similar to what you see here on the screen, or I can just export the details. And so if I select details only, which is usually what when I export a report, I'm usually using the details. Then I can choose between Excel or CSV, and then I can go ahead and dump that. And what happens when you export it is it just creates a copy of that, which it puts in your downloads. So here's my downloads button on my computer. When I hit export, you'll see that I'll select CSV. You'll see it put a file in there, and I could go ahead and open that up if I wanted to. So I'll go ahead and open it up in CSV, and now I've got my data in Excel, and I can slice and dice and do other things to it if I want to. And that's a very quick overview of how to create a contact report.
Thank you for watching this video. On the screen and in the description, I've included links to our Reports and Dashboards playlist. And I've also included a 5-minute video that will share 3 strategies that we use to increase results and reduce Salesforce license costs through a Salesforce program called OSP. Please spend a few more moments of your precious time with us, and we will help you take Salesforce to a whole new level in your company. Finally, please like and subscribe. We'll see you soon. Thank you.